Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Desitarane. Thank you. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. No, around it this one. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So today we are celebrating the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada. The appearance and disappearance of a pure Vaishnava is always auspicious. Usually in the material world, when someone leaves their body, it's a very inauspicious moment. But when pure devotee leaves his body, it's educational and it's auspicious. So many devotees saw Prabhupada and were with Prabhupada when he was leaving his body. And of course there's a video of it, because it's good education for us to see how even up to the last moment Prabhupada was Krishna conscious. Even though his body was raked with pain, still he tolerated it. He was able to he was able to give the last purport, and he was also fully conscious, and he was surrounded by loving devotees who were chanting the holy names, Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So he gave us an example, and also before he left, he knew he was going to leave his body at least 6 months before, and he basically stopped eating for a very long time and drinking just a little bit of liquid. Okay, make this lower. There's an echo. It's too loud. So he was able to. Okay, there's an echo. You have to lower the volume. So he was always Krishna conscious, because he's a pure devotee. Prabhupada talks about this. He says, Acharyas in the disciplic succession of Lord Chaitanya teach us that we shall try to place the message of Lord Chaitanya very humbly to the people in general, and that will make us successful in our service to the Lord. I sincerely bless you that your future hopes to present Krishna consciousness in terms of French custom may be crowned with success. There's a letter he wrote to Janardhan. This was one of his first disciples. I actually met him in France. He was a scholar. He was a Sanskrit scholar. He was relatively young, but he was very educated. Prabhupada says, there are 4 things desirable in this material world, namely good parentage, sumptuous wealth, sufficient education, and good beauty. These things are sometimes impediments in the service of the Lord, because such persons with great parentage, wealth, etc., become materially puffed up and thus deviate from Krishna consciousness. But when they are employed in the service of the Lord, their value becomes many more times greater. Just like zero has no value, but when zero is placed on the right side of one, the value of zero enhances in 10 times. Similarly, our life, wealth, intelligence, and words become 100 times and 100 greater and greater if they are employed in the service of the Lord. I shall always pray to Krishna that you may come out a successful and eminent scholar, so that your writings and thoughts may be seriously taken by the mundane wranglers. Our only business is to present Krishna consciousness to the ignorant mass of people, and if such people agree to hear in consideration of our important position in the material world, it is a great opportunity to place our submission, and thereby our mission is fulfilled. Acharyas in the disciplic succession of Lord Chaitanya teach us that we shall try to place the message of Lord Chaitanya very humbly to the people in general, and that will make us successful in our service to the Lord. I sincerely bless you that your future hopes to present Krishna consciousness in terms of French custom may be crowned with success. So I met him, this Janardhan Das, in Paris when he was leaving Krishna consciousness. And at that point, he was offering to sell the original 3 copies of the first canto that Prabhupada brought to America to me. And I bought them from him. I felt like this is the luckiest thing that had ever happened to me in my life. For him, he was happy to get rid of the books. This is a very sad thing, and it hurt Srila Prabhupada. And so when a person comes in contact with a pure devotee, it's the greatest benediction. One can go through many, many lifetimes before they can meet a genuine pure devotee. And if they realize this, it is the success of their life. Unfortunately, this person sort of realized it. That's why he accepted initiation. But then, because of his attachment to academia and to become a famous scholar, of course, we never hear of him. He didn't become a famous scholar, and he became bewildered by that, and he left Krishna consciousness. Although Prabhupada said, I sincerely bless you that your future hopes to present Krishna consciousness in terms of French custom may be crowned with success. In other words, when it says French custom in the French language, because this Janardhan was I think he was a French Canadian. Now, next he speaks about something that we talked about recently in our morning classes. Of course, a lot of you don't come to the morning class, but the ones that do will recognize this. Then he tells Janardhan, regarding the action of Ban Maharaj, we shall discuss the matter when we meet. For the present, you may know that this gentleman is very much materially ambitious. He wants to utilize Krishna consciousness for his material name and fame. Sometimes he greatly offended our Guru Maharaj, and it so happened that at the last stage, practically Guru Maharaj rejected him. And the result, we can find that instead of becoming a great preacher of Krishna consciousness, this gentleman has become artificially a head of a mundane institution. To become a very important man in the mundane estimation is not success in Krishna consciousness. He was first deputed by my Guru Maharaj, along with our late godbrother, Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha Maharaj, to open a missionary center in London. And they stayed there for 3 years, but didn't make any appreciable advance, except that they spent enormous money of my Guru Maharaj he was sending Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was sending 700 rupees a month, which was a good amount of money at that time, to support them so that they could preach. And after 4 years, they had nothing to show for it. Absolutely zero. They didn't even make one devotee. Except they spent enormous money of my Guru Maharaj, and later on they were called back to India. So that is a great history. It is not possible to say everything in this letter. But for the present, be satisfied with these words, and later we shall talk more and more. On the whole, you may know that he is not a liberated person, and therefore he cannot initiate any person to Krishna consciousness. It requires special spiritual benediction from higher authorities. So, to be able to become a guru in Krishna consciousness is not an ordinary thing. It's not because of academic qualifications or business qualifications. It is based on how much one is actually surrendered to their guru and following the instructions of the guru and being humble and being completely dependent on the mercy of Krishna, that one can preach successfully. And they have to be strictly following the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, they have no standing as far as being able to convince other people to be Krishna conscious. The statements of Thakur Bhaktivinoda are as good as scriptures, because he is a liberated person. Generally, the spiritual master comes from the group of such eternal associates of the Lord, but anyone who follows the principles of such ever-liberated persons is as good as one in the above-mentioned group. The gurus from nature's study are accepted as such on the principle that an elevated person in Krishna consciousness does not accept anyone as disciple, but he accepts everyone as expansion of his guru. That is a very high position called Mahabhagavat, just like Radharani sometimes thinks a subordinate of hers as her teacher to understand devotion of Krishna. A person who is liberated acharya and guru cannot commit any mistake, but there are persons who are less qualified or not liberated, but still can act as guru and acharya by strictly following the disciplic succession. So that's my position. I don't claim to be a liberated soul. And no one should complain. There's no one should claim that I'm a liberated soul. But I am strictly following my guru. So that even though I'm not a liberated soul, I can still act as a spiritual master as long as I'm strictly following. If I don't strictly follow, then I'm invalidated. It is the injunction of the Shastras that anyone who sees the deity in the temple as made of wood or stone, or considers the acharyas and gurus. So you see Prabhupada is differentiating between acharya, who is a liberated soul, and gurus who may not be liberated but are able to act as gurus because they are strictly following the acharya. See? So, and anyone who sees the deity in the temple as made of wood or stone, or considers the acharyas and gurus as ordinary common men, and discriminates Vaishnavas or devotees as belonging to a certain group or caste, are called hellish. So in Krishna consciousness, if we look at people and try and judge them by what their ethnicity is, or what their birth is, or what their body is, like maybe sometimes a guru may be disfigured, maybe have a disfigured body, maybe born crippled or something. To discriminate on those bases is considered hellish and very insulting. Your question about Mon Maharaj in relation to his disciple is very intelligent and intricate, and we shall discuss at long when we meet. And now he talks about something else. He says, regarding Kirtananda's letter, I may inform you that I always think of him and pray to Krishna for his good sense. That is my duty. Anyone who comes to me for my help or wants to advance in Krishna consciousness and whom I initiate and accept as my disciple, I must pray for him and his welfare always. So Kirtananda personally served me, especially during my illness, which I always remember. But because somehow or other he has misunderstood our activities, that does not mean that I am no longer his well-wisher. I write at the end of my letters to my disciples, your ever well-wisher. And as such, I cannot become otherwise than being ever well-wisher of my disciples, even though he may leave me. So I was praying to Krishna that he may save Kirtananda from his misunderstanding, and if ever he chanted Hare Krishna at least once with a sincere heart, I am sure Krishna would not allow him to go out of his influence. Therefore, I believe that he can never forget the form of Krishna, neither he can deny his personality. It is good news that he is trying to establish a new Vrindavan, which I suggested through Hayagriva Brahmachari, and if he is successful in his attempt, certainly it will be considered a great benediction upon him by Lord Krishna. When I offered him sannyas, I expected such great achievements through him, and if Krishna desires, he will come out successful in his great attempt. Yes, I express my desire to go there through Hayagriva Brahmachari, and if I am invited to go there by Kirtananda Swami, it will be my great pleasure to see the place and enjoy his company. So here's another example. He's talking about two disciples here, one Janardhan, who's left him, and two Kirtananda, who also left him, right? Not only he left him, but he complained about Prabhupada to the immigration authorities, and because Prabhupada could not enter the United States for almost 1 year. He was forced to stay in Montreal during that period. So we see, and Kirtananda said so many nasty things about Prabhupada and ISKCON, but yet Prabhupada is his ever well-wisher. And he did come back, and he did open New Vrindavan, which is still going on today. But there, he has a very checkered history. But Prabhupada was steady in his determination to not offend anyone and not to reject anyone, if necessary, and always to pray for everyone's spiritual advancement. So that is the heart of a pure devotee. He doesn't have any vengeance. He's always willing to forgive. Forgiveness, to condemn is easy, to forgive is difficult. And Srila Prabhupada has a beautiful, forgiving heart. So, in this letter, which is dated April 26, 1968, Prabhupada establishes what is the difference between a liberated acharya and a guru who may not be liberated but can act as a guru because he or she is strictly following the instructions of the liberated acharya. Again, many times, not many times, but some people criticize ISKCON, saying, none of the gurus are liberated acharyas, and therefore they are not bona fide. But see, that's not what Prabhupada said. This is what Prabhupada said. So whenever people try to make up stories, all you have to do is not be impressed by the story, but ask, if you don't know, what did Prabhupada say about this? And if someone is bona fide devotee, he'll be able to show you what Prabhupada said, so that Because so many people are coming up with different concepts to water down Krishna consciousness or stop the success of Krishna consciousness. So we should not be bewildered by it. We should not jump to any conclusions, but ask a senior devotee, what did Prabhupada say about this? And you should be confident that Prabhupada has spoken everything about every issue that concerns Krishna consciousness. We have his letters, we have his books, we have his conversations. So there's no ambiguity on any question that may be asked that concerns Krishna consciousness. So, Prabhupada also explains what is the secret of success. And he says in another letter, if you simply reproduce what I have tried to explain in those books, meaning his books, surely you will come out victorious, even in the midst of so many great mundane scholars. The description given in these books are not mundane speculations, but they are authorized versions of liberated souls presented by our humble self. So the strength is not in us, but the strength is in the Supreme Lord, and we have simply to present them without any adulteration, in humble service spirit. That is the secret of success, hoping you are well. So here Prabhupada is explaining something very essential, how we can be successful in preaching. So he has given us everything we need to be successful in our preaching. He has written in his books the authorized commentaries of liberated souls, the acharyas in the Vaishnava disciplic succession. And, of course, the words of Krishna himself and the words of the Mahajans, great authorities of Krishna, like Narada Muni and Brahma himself, Lord Shiva also, the Kumaras, and so forth, the great Mahajans. So he has distilled, not denatured, but distilled the teachings of all these great devotees and Krishna, of course, the Supreme Guru, and presented them, he says, by our humble self. So the strength is not in us. This is the problem when people have a personal desire. They want to become famous. They want to become materially successful. They want to be recognized in academia or in some discipline. And so they believe that the strength is in themselves. But here Prabhupada clearly says, so the strength is not in us, but the strength is in the Supreme Lord. And we have simply to present the teachings of the Lord and his devotees without any adulteration, in humble service spirit. So humility is the first quality of knowledge. And unless a person is humble, they can never really present Krishna consciousness correctly. So it takes a lot of humility to repeat the words of Krishna without adulteration. And that means that one has no desire for personal recognition. One is satisfied simply by presenting the words of Krishna without any alteration and the words of the pure devotees, great acharyas, without any alteration. That is the secret of success. And that's a letter that he wrote to a devotee named Devananda, who I also met. Many of these devotees have passed on now. And that's part of a letter to written on the 27th of September 1968. And that letter was written from Seattle, when Prabhupada was in Seattle. So now, and there's another important point here. This is a letter he wrote to a devotee named Krishna Das. And he says, to feel separation from the spiritual master or Krishna is very good position. That means that one who is in pure love with Krishna and his representatives, the spiritual master, he thinks always of them. And this thinking process is Krishna consciousness. What is Damodar Astakam? It's all about thinking of the relationship between Krishna and his mother Yasoda. To take all the other junk thoughts that we have in our mind out and fill that void with that supreme nectarian relationship between Mother Yasoda and her little son Krishna, who happens to be also the supreme personality of Godhead. See? So this is real Krishna consciousness. So to feel separation from the spiritual master of Krishna is very good position, Prabhupada says. That means one who is in pure love with Krishna and his representative, the spiritual master, he thinks always of them. And this thinking process is Krishna consciousness. This thinking process is Krishna consciousness. See? If you have some desire, even though you're talking to someone or you're working, the desire keeps coming into your mind. Right? So, if our desire is to please Krishna through the instructions of bona fide Guru, and that's always in our mind, and we can tell that that was always in Prabhupada's mind, because when he first met his Guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in 1922, in the first 30 seconds of their discussion, his Guru gave Prabhupada his life's mission to preach in the English-speaking world. And from that point on, he began to prepare himself to do that. And it took a long time because he was married, he had 5 kids, he had to wait for them to all get situated in life, get educated and married, and then make sure that his wife is taken care of. And so 1922 to 1965, how many years is that? It's like almost 40 years, huh? 43 years, right? He prepared himself during those 43 years by engaging in devotional service, by being initiated. He got initiated in 1933, I think, or 1932. So 10 years later, after he met his Guru, he got initiated. But he accepted his Guru in 1922 in his heart. And then, right before his Guru disappeared, he wrote a letter and said, "My dear Gurudev, I'm just a lowly grihasta. I'm not like one of the eminent sannyasis that you have made, and they're surrounding you and giving you personal service. I'm not able to serve you personally, but is there any service I can do for you? Please let me know." This was like almost 2 or 3 weeks before the disappearance of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It's in 1936. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur disappeared on New Year's Eve, 1936. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur immediately answered him. And he said the same thing that he said in 1922 in their first meeting, in the first 30 seconds or minute. He said, if you can spread this Krishna consciousness in the English-speaking world, it'll be very good for you and good for me. So that just solidified Prabhupada's life's mission in his mind. And he was always thinking about that, how to do it. And why was he thinking about it all the time? Because 3 of his godbrothers went to foreign countries. Those 2 that went to Ban Maharaj and Tirtha Maharaj went to England. And then one godbrother went to Hamburg, Germany. And they all failed. From that point on, no one in the Gaudiya Math, the movement of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, ventured out of India to preach Krishna consciousness. They were all convinced that it's impossible. How do I know that? Well, in 1996, I organized a grand celebration. Not only I did it. It was all the temples in the world celebrated the 100th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada, and I organized a program in San Jose. Why did I choose San Jose? Because there was a large community of devotees who had left ISKCON and joined the Gaudiya Math that were there. So I said, well, they're still all initiated by Prabhupada initially. So I wanted to go there. And then there were many of them were initiated by Sridhar Maharaj, which was Prabhupada's godbrother. And then some more were initiated by Sridhar Maharaj's principal disciple. And so I invited the disciple of Sridhar Maharaj, who was a guru, to be the guest speaker at the program. So a lot of people came, a lot of the Gaudiya Math people who were originally ISKCON devotees, and a lot of ISKCON devotees from our temple in Berkeley, California, came, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Sridhar Maharaj's main disciple came, and he was a guru at that time. Many of the people were initiated by him also. And he spoke, and he said, today, he said, I've come on this occasion of your Prabhupada's 100th anniversary to do what you do in your Christian world. I'm going to make a confession. So when he said that, I was a little surprised. And so, I sort of, it caught my attention. And I was listening very carefully, and everyone was very quiet. Everyone was listening very, very attentively. And he said, my Guru Maharaj and I, we're in our main temple in Navadvip, and we had heard about your Prabhupada, who spread the movement all over the Western world and made hundreds of disciples. And we saw many of those people coming to Mayapur, many of those people who were Americans and Europeans and Africans and other nationalities. They were coming to Mayapur. And we were surprised. And I have to admit, we did not think it was possible. And we had a hard time believing that he actually did it, even though we saw those disciples. So, he said, then your Guru Maharaj disappeared. Of course, my Guru Maharaj also disappeared. But I was invited to go to Western countries to preach, and I did. And I saw with my own eyes many of the temples that Prabhupada started, and many of the devotees, many of the devotees that he made. I still couldn't believe it. When he said that, it was shocking. He said, I still couldn't believe it. He said, how your Prabhupada did this amazing, wonderful, glorious task of spreading this movement all over the world. He said, it was unbelievable. And I have to make my confession today. All we are doing, and he's referring to all the Gaudiya Math gurus that are going to the West now and preaching, we are simply eating the remnants of Srila Prabhupada. That was shocking when he said that. But it's true, and he spoke the truth. So, what did Prabhupada do? He actually accomplished the mission of Lord Chaitanya, who said, Prativriteya Chayatra Nagara Adigrama Sarvatma Pachura Haibe Moranama. He said, this holy name will be spread to every town and village of the world and all living entities, including the animals and the plants and every living entity will hear it. So Prabhupada was able to spread the movement all over the world, and it's still spreading. His accomplishment is still taking place for every town and village and all living entities to hear the holy name. That's why the Sankirtan movement is so important, because it's to give everybody a chance to chant Hare Krishna and at least hear it or chant. And we should be determined to do this on a larger and larger scale, at least in our Prabhupada Desh, which is the Seattle area. So he says here in a letter to Krishna Das in 21st of October 1968, he says, to feel separation from the spiritual master or Krishna is very good position. That means one who is in pure love with Krishna and his representative, the spiritual master, he thinks always of them. And this thinking process is Krishna consciousness. If we can think always of Krishna, even in separation, that is Krishna consciousness. And in the absolute platform, there's no difference of separation and meeting. The separation is also meeting. Rather, in separation, one relishes the loving relationship more tasty. So don't be disappointed that you are separated from me. I am also always thinking of you, how you are making progress there. And I am always expecting your letters that you have already opened a center there, and you are working very nicely. So far, Seattle is concerned. So this is 1968, 21st October. He's writing a letter from Seattle. He says, so far as Seattle is concerned, we have opened here a branch about 1 month past. So that means he opened the temple in Seattle on the 11th, approximately 11th or 12th of October, 1968. Seattle, I think, was the 4th temple to be open in North America. People have known it, he says, and it opened here a branch about 1 month past, and it is well established. People have known it, and students are coming from the university community and taking interest. I've gone to the university and delivered a lecture. And last Sunday, we initiated 3 devotees, and 2 or 3 are still waiting. So this branch is going nicely. And the Kirtan party, led by Tamal and Jayananda, they are also selling back to Godhead daily at least 50 to 75 copies, and collecting money also average $40 or $50 daily. This was the beginning of the movement, right? So this branch is very nice. I hope I shall hear soon that you are doing the same thing in Hamburg, Germany. So he says, it does not matter, even if we have got a temple, or if we don't, in other words. But if the preaching work goes on, that is a great satisfaction. So this is how the movement started. These are grassroots times, in the beginning of the movement in the United States. And Prabhupada's enthusiasm, whenever he heard about something advancing in Krishna consciousness, he became very, very pleased. But also, he was very concerned about devotees who left the movement. And he was always praying for their welfare. And he said, anyone who's chanted even once the holy name of Krishna, let alone those who were initiated in chanting 16 rounds, they will always come back, because they'll never be able to get Krishna out of their minds. And this is a fact. I know this. I know many devotees that left the movement. It's not that they went to Gaudiya Math. They actually left the movement and left Krishna consciousness. But whenever I meet them, they fondly speak about Prabhupada. They fondly speak about him. They can't get him out of their minds. So one lady wrote Prabhupada a letter in 1971, 14th of October, she was an initiated devotee named Vrinda Devi, and she was complaining. First of all, she left her husband, and then she wrote a letter of complaint to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada answered her. He said, "Our ISKCON society married couples means that both parties fully are engaged in Krishna consciousness. I have noted your several complaints against the devotees, but it would be better to set the example rather than to criticize the defects of the devotees. We should always remember that we recruit members from people in general. It is not expected that every one of our members should be immediately to the standard qualification. The best thing for you is to set the example by your personal behavior and try to reform the others, not by criticizing, but by friendly behavior. If sometimes there are any disagreements, we should try to forget such incidences and be always in friendship with each other. So I hope you will immediately return to your husband and forget all these disagreements and fully cooperate for developing our Berlin Center, hoping this will meet you in good health." Regarding, and he says, P.S., regarding children, when you are married, you will have children undoubtedly, but you should wait for the opportune moment when Krishna will bestow upon you all good fortune. Our line of action is enthusiasm and patience. Haribol. So he says, set the example rather than criticize the defects. Then in another letter to a devotee named Upendra, who was a very dear devotee of Srila Prabhupada, but he also had problems staying in Krishna consciousness. So he's writing, "Here's my dear Upendra. Please accept my blessings. I am in due receipt of your letter, 28th September 1971. I have noted the contents. Also, I have received newspaper clippings. So it appears that things are going on very nicely in Melbourne. Please now stick there and develop that center. There is no question of leaving our society. One may think like that, but I cannot allow you to leave. That is my inspiration. Those who have left the society, I'm always thinking of them. Especially for you, there is no question of leaving. Stay in Melbourne and preach with steady determination. I am glad to learn that you are in steady correspondence with Karandar, and I am sure he will give you all good direction. So don't be agitated by anyone's so-called demand, but you stick to your preaching work, husband and wife, chanting and following the regulative principles. Don't be agitated by trifle things. Remain steady and go on with your preaching work. Krishna will help you in every way. I am so pleased with you that you have done so nicely in the service of the Lord to your best capacity. That is required. It is not that everyone should be equally expert, but the thing that is needed is that we should be serious and sincere in our engagement. No one or nobody can adequately serve Krishna because Krishna is unlimited. But Krishna is so kind that even a small leaf or flower offered to Krishna by the poorest man in the world, Krishna accepts such thing. Krishna is so opulent that he is not even slightly benefited by any presentation or any gift, but he is so kind and merciful that he accepts a little bit of leaf or flower or water from his devotees, and because a devotee comes to him with such love and affection, he becomes very much satisfied. As a father is always sorry for the son who is out of home, similarly, Krishna is not very happy on account of so many bewildered fallen souls in the material world. He therefore comes personally to ask them to surrender again to him. But the conditioned soul is so much illusion that it is very hard to make him surrender to Krishna. Therefore, each and every one of us, if we can give service to Krishna by making another person or another man surrender to Krishna, then Krishna will very much appreciate that service, and that is our gain. Try to follow this principle and preach vigorously to your best capacity, and everything will be all right. Don't worry. So far, your question. The soul is fundamentally pure, but he has an aptitude to come to the impure state of material contamination. He is therefore called tatastha, or marginal. He has got the liberty of staying within the pure state or becoming contaminated. That is his choice. This marginal point can be understood in this way. Just like you are standing... Now this explains how the living entity can fall from Vaikuntha. I gave this example yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. There are other ways of explaining how one can fall from Vaikuntha, but this is Prabhupada's explanation of how one can actually fall from Vaikuntha. A lot of people have debated this, but obviously they never read this letter, or they ignored it. This marginal point can be understood in this way. Just like you are standing on the shore of the sea, so you can remain on the land, or sometimes you can jump into the water to enjoy, as you will see on the beaches. So many young boys are enjoying. But that is dangerous at the same time. One who does not know swimming expertly, well, he may become drowned. Similarly, the soul, from the spiritual platform, sometimes jumps over the material ocean of nescience. The Vedic knowledge gives him specific instruction how to swim over, but if he is a rascal, he does not take the instructions through the bona fide representative, the spiritual master, and he becomes drowned. That is the position. The Vedic instruction is so nice that the soul, when he jumps over the material ocean, the Vedic instruction teaches him how to swim and come back again to the shore. This swimming process, according to Vedic instruction, is called sacrifice, charity, and penance, or yajna, dana, and tapasya. One who learns these techniques of swimming over the ocean of nescience or ignorance, he goes back home, back to Godhead. One who does not take to this swimming process, he becomes drowned. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is stated, Icha dvesa samuttena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani samaham sargayanta parantapa. It's Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, 27th verse. Swargayanta parantapa, which means deluded by desire to enjoy the material world and becoming envious of Krishna, one comes to the material world. Bhagavad Gita 7:27. So read our literature profusely, and you will get sufficient knowledge. Hoping this will meet you in good health. Your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Jai Srila Prabhupada. So you see, Prabhupada, there was no internet at that time. He wrote thousands of letters instructing his disciples in every aspect of Krishna consciousness. And we are so lucky to have a lot of these letters. We don't have all of them. There's still some that may not have been turned in, but there are thousands. So, and then another interesting point. He wrote a letter to a disciple named Raya Rama. Raya Rama was one of the first devotees. He was a brilliant person, and he was in charge of the Back to Godhead magazine. He was a very good writer, very well educated. But unfortunately, he left the movement. And now Prabhupada explains. It's trying to bring him back. And he writes this letter the 22nd of October, 1971. My dear Raya Rama, please accept my blessings. I am in due receipt of your letter dated 11th October, 1971, and have noted the contents. I welcome you for your coming back to our society, and you are feeling very nicely the association of devotees. Srila Rupa Goswami has described that devotional service can be advanced by 6 processes. Perhaps you know them. They are as follows. enthusiasm, patience, conviction, following the regulative principles, being honest in one's profession, and in the association of devotees. So this Krishna Consciousness Society is especially meant for giving people the opportunity to associate with devotees. Devotees means who are following the regulative principles. One cannot be independent and at the same time become a devotee, because all devotional activities are based on surrender. So in the association of devotees, we learn this important item, how to surrender. But if we keep our independence and try to become devotees, that is not possible. You write to say that you cannot feel any taste for temple life or deity worship. This means you are keeping the same temperament you entertained before leaving our society. Our process is to accept both the lines of Bhagavat Marga, which is chanting Hare Krishna, and Panchatriki Marga, that is deity worship. In other words, doing Sankirtan and deity worship. Perhaps you might have seen the picture of the Gaudiya mission. On one side, there is the Bhagavat book, that means Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam. And on the other side, a picture of Lakshmi Narayana for deity worship. You cannot make any progress in devotional service unless simultaneously you follow both the lines. Just as the tracks of a railroad line, both must be there. Similarly, temple worship is essential for purifying us from the material contamination, and without being purified, we cannot glorify the Lord. As it is stated in Bhagavad Gita that the Lord is completely pure, and we cannot approach Krishna without being purified. So as you say that you do not feel very much encouraged in deity worship and temple life, I see that your disease is still continuing. Under the circumstances, simple academic career will not help you. You see how academia is very, very attractive to certain classes of people. Janardhan was a big academic, and he couldn't get that. He didn't see the difference between academic achievement and Krishna consciousness, or Krishna conscious achievement. And here, Rai Rama, who's a highly educated person, he also cannot see that difference. Therefore, he's not attracted to deity worship. So now let's hear what else Prabhupada says. I see your disease is still continuing. Under the circumstances, simple academic career will not help you. If you want to live with us, you must accept temple life, namely cleanly shaven head, observing the regulative principles, decorating the body with tilak, etc. You know all these things. So far, your editorial work is concerned. I welcome your good service. But if you do not follow temple life and deity worship, it will set a bad example. When I was there in New York last time, I saw that the tendency was there in the press members not to follow the principles. So I said, better to stop the press. Since then, Advaita and the others are attending temple worship. Similarly, you must also do the same and chant at least 16 rounds, etc. I am so glad to learn that you are eager to preach, but we should know that we cannot preach without being solid in our standing as a devotee. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said that apani achari prabhu jivre sakaya. This means that Lord Chaitanya wanted that one should preach by behaving himself exactly what he's preaching. So our Krishna consciousness movement preaching depends on personal behavior. If you want to preach the gospel of Lord Jesus Christ on the principles of Bhagavad Gita, you will find so many differences. Those who are following Jesus Christ, let them follow strictly to the principle of the Bible. Thou shalt not kill is now being misinterpreted by Christian priests. Now they say, thou shalt not murder. This means trying to save themselves from the crime of animal killing. So you cannot teach such unscrupuled followers of Jesus
the message of Bhagavad Gita. If you want to preach Bible, you can tell them why there will be misinterpretation. In New York, there is a big press that prints Watchtower. That's the Jehovah's Witnesses. They are forcibly criticizing Christian behavior. I read that one Christian priest allowed a marriage between two men, homosex. So these things are going on. So your proposal for preaching the gospel on the basis of Bhagavad Gita will not be successful. If you want to do that, I cannot check you, but I cannot allow you to do such things from within our society. You have to understand our philosophy perfectly, follow the regulative principles, and then, in fact, you can edit our books and papers. When I shall go to Mayapur, then upon hearing from you of my proposal, as mentioned above, I shall arrange for your coming to India. First of all, you have to decide yourself whether you are prepared to surrender to our principles. But if you keep your independence either in Mayapura or New York, your position is the same. To associate with me, you're always welcome, but not with your independence. That will not help me or you. Hoping this will meet you in good health, your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. These are amazing letters that Prabhupada wrote, but he made it crystal clear what is Krishna consciousness and what is not Krishna consciousness. And finally, I want to read another letter. This is to Bali Mardan, who's another person who was a very prominent devotee. He had every title in ISKCON at one point. He was initiated Brahmana. He was temple president. He was member of the GBC. He was in charge of Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. He had and he was a sannyasi. He had every qualification that you could achieve in ISKCON. Right? And he was very close to Srila Prabhupada. So he writes, March 5th, 1972. Please accept my blessings. My dear Bali Mardan, please accept my blessings. I beg to acknowledge receipt of your letter dated February 26, 1972, and I have received a small booklet, Transcendental Teachings of Prahlad Maharaj, also. It is very nice, and it is just to the point for our ISKCON press. You are very well situated to make endless numbers of this type of small booklet, and I am very much pleased to understand how nicely you are doing it. Now, if you are also able to increase our distribution at the same time, then this will be the success of our Krishna consciousness movement to print and distribute profusely side by side. We had got some indication from Karandar Prabhu that there was some misunderstanding and things were not going too well between you both big leaders. That is why I was little concerned, because such things should never be allowed to fructify within our society. That will spoil everything. But I am glad to hear from you that because there was some misinformation, that we had got the wrong impression, and actually that everything is progressing in a spirit of mutual cooperation in all respects now. This is Krishna consciousness, working together to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is that famous quote. You will show me how much you love me by cooperating in Krishna consciousness. So way back in 1972, he said the same thing in this letter, but he said it again, purportedly, and I think it was Bhakti True Maharaj who heard it and then spread the word to others, that you will show your love for me by cooperating together. Okay? Working together to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Practically now, it is in the hands of you big guns to manage everything so that there may never be internal difficulties amongst us, and so that we may always go on increasing more and more the influence of Lord Chaitanya's philosophy of Sankirtan process upon all the world. That will be your great achievement, and if you go on helping me in this way, you may know it for certain that very soon you will see Krishna face to face. In short words, I am very much fond of these booklets. Now go on increasing. I am also pleased to hear that you have eliminated all the book debts from ISKCON Press. I am very much pleased that you are working so nicely. Now you and Karandar, along with Hayagriva, Jayadvaita, and others, you can jointly think how to double our books supply. There is no limit in this respect. So Prabhupada would always say, when he would get the amazing scores of book distribution, he would immediately write back and say, double it. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to give you some nectar of Prabhupada's direct words and his direct instructions. So we heard today how much Prabhupada is praying for the advancement of his disciples. That is the position of a guru, to be always the well-wisher of everyone, disciples or not disciples. The guru is always a well-wisher, and Prabhupada always signed his letters, your ever well-wisher. Also, we heard how he never rejected anyone who left, but was always praying for their welfare. And that is the magnanimous heart of a pure devotee. He's not envious of anyone. He's not vengeful, and he's always offering his blessings. And then we heard how he instructed one should not leave ISKCON and criticize ISKCON. One should give the example of how to follow. That's the best way to rehabilitate people who are not following, to give them the example of how to follow. And that depends on one's humility and determination to preach Krishna consciousness, which is utsaha nischayat dayat tatat karma pavartanad. One must be enthusiastic, one must be confident, one must be determined, and so forth. And then one can not leave and not be discouraged, but always be proactive in spreading Krishna consciousness. This is what Prabhupada did during those 43 years. He prepared himself to accomplish the instruction that his guru gave him. He did not give up. And when he came to America, he had to suffer several heart attacks. He also had a heart attack when he was in America. And he got so sick he had to leave and go back to India to recuperate. And then he came back again. He never gave up. And then we see how he was instructing devotees who were thinking about going. And he was explaining how he said one time his Guru Maharaj had initiated a gentleman, and that gentleman was doing very well in Krishna consciousness. And one day his wife came and pulled him out of the temple. Bhaktisiddhanta was preaching, and she came in and grabbed her husband, and pulled him out. And it was very painstaking for Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So these type of things happen, but it's very painful for the guru to see a disciple leave the movement, and he'll do everything possible to bring them back. And then, of course, Prabhupada did not compromise the regulative principles. You must follow the regulative principles and participate in deity worship if you want to be a devotee. And then you can preach Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. You can go out on Sankirtan with a happy attitude and a positive attitude and uplifting for people to see that. Hell, here's a person who's positive. Everybody else is worried, this thing is going to happen, that thing's going to happen. These people are dancing and happy, And I've told this story before, I'll tell it one more time. We were doing Sankirtan in the beginning, 16 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week in Paris. And we were not going just in highly populated places. We separated Paris into its 15, I think it has 15 different sections. And we would go into every section and walk and chant in streets that were empty, with like high-rise buildings, all apartments. We would chant there also. So one day we were going down the street in the 15th arrondissement, or the 15th section of Paris, which is a high-class area and a lot of very expensive apartments. And we were passing a public telephone booth, right? That nobody had cell phones then. And as we passed it, a man stepped out and stopped me and said, "Someone wants to talk to you," and handed me the phone. Because there was a phone with a wire connected, right? So he was just holding it at the edge of the telephone booth. I said, "What?" I said, "I don't know. Who's calling me? This is a public telephone." He said, No, this person wants to speak to you. You have to talk to her. So I picked up the phone and I said, "Hello." And she started talking real fast in French. "Vous me connaissez pas, mais moi je vous connais. Et tous les semaines, vous venez par ici au même temps et vous chantez votre chant." She said, "You don't know me, but I know you, because every week you come by my apartment house and you're chanting your song and dancing." So I thought she was going to call the police. So I said, "Well, excusez-moi, madame, si vous voulez, on viendra pas la semaine prochaine." So I said, "Excuse us." I said, "Please, if you want, we won't come here anymore." She said, Non, c'est pas ça. C'est différent. C'est que la semaine dernière, j'étais sur le toit de mon appartement et moi, j'étais prêt de me suicider. Mais vous êtes venu et vous avez chanté avec tellement d'élan et de plaisir que ça m'a redonné le désir de vivre. And she said, No, it's not that I don't want you to chant. She said, "Last week I was on the roof of my building and I was contemplating committing suicide. But you came just then, and you were chanting so ecstatically, and you were so happy, it gave me a new reason to live." And this is a true story. I'm not making up one word of it. I'm not exaggerating it. And she said, "Et maintenant, je veux que vous venez à mon appartement et vous chantez et purify ma maison." She said, "Now I want you to come up to my apartment and purify it by chanting." I'm not kidding you. Those are her exact words. And we went up, and she had the penthouse. In other words, it's very expensive. She had the penthouse. She owned it. And we sat down and chanted. And it's because of her that we were able to make a meeting between Prabhupada and Cardinal Daniel, the head of the Catholic Church in France. She helped us a lot for a certain amount of time. So, Sankirtan and deity worship, and chanting Hare Krishna, and eating prasadam, and dancing in ecstasy, being happy, following the rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness strictly, and coming regularly to class every day to hear Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. This is the way to become Krishna conscious. And very quickly, so Prabhupada was able to make all these devotees very quickly advance in Krishna consciousness, and because of that, the movement expanded very quickly. And the secret was that they should all work cooperatively, not take trifling disagreements seriously, and continue to cooperate to please Prabhupada and Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Haribol. If you want to make this temple grow, we have to cooperate, we have to follow the rules and regulations, and we have to be always hearing all this knowledge that Prabhupada has given us. He spent all this time and energy printing and editing these books. They're full of transcendental ecstasies of Srila Prabhupada. His purports are his transcendental ecstasies. Every purport is different. Most people think, oh, well, this class is going to be the same thing, chant Hare Krishna and eat prasadam and go out on Sankirtan. I mean, I've heard this too many times, I'm not interested, it's just the same thing. It's not. Believe me. If you actually hear Bhagavatam spoken by genuine devotees, you will learn something new every day. Something astonishingly important every day. That's how these books are full of transcendental realizations. And that's what keeps us in Krishna consciousness. That's why people, when they go back to Godhead, they never come back again, because they enter into this realm where every day variety is the basis of happiness. There's infinite variety, and everything is increasing all the time in the spiritual world. And that's what happens. You begin to experience that when you hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam every day. Every day something new is there that you didn't know, and gives you a deeper understanding of the philosophy. Hare Krishna.